or imagined, and we'll be showcasing the works of Ryan Woods, Ruben Rowlands, and Maria Palapanidou. After the composers have introduced themselves and their work, we recommend everyone switches their microphones off for the presentation of the compositions, as this will help to minimize any disturbance. And after each presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions and talk about the work. And also, just like to make the discussion as interactive as possible, we recommend that you use the, there's like a, I think there's usually like a hand, isn't there like a hand you can put up or something? There's usually like some kind of like hand you can, finger you can put up. Oh, I don't know actually. I don't know where it is.
It's in the reactions.
Oh, it's in reactions.
So it can just sit there from.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, obviously using the chat.
Run up to the big.
Sorry. But yeah, so it's just because we can't always see when people are like, you know, like indicating that they have something to say. So it's just really nice if like you could like do that, like pick up your hand kind of thing. It's a bit like old school, but you know. So yeah, what else? Yeah, so I think we're ready to move over to Ruben. Please could you tell a bit about yourself and like what you're going to be sharing with us?
Sure thing. Thank you, Eliora. My name is Ruben. I'm a composer who recently graduated from a master's in composition at the University of Manchester. Since finishing my portfolio, I've composed absolutely nothing, but it's kind of been at the back of my mind to try something at some point. But it's very nice when I get asked to talk or comment about previous music that I've made. It sort of makes it a bit more worthwhile to sort of see these pieces have longevity outside of the modules that they were written for or whatever. So the piece that I'll be showcasing is a piece called Shifting Threads for trumpet, sax, and violin. And I wrote it because it was for a performance given by the Vonnegut Collective, who are a sort of contemporary improvisatory music group. And they came in to do a workshop, a set of workshops and a performance with postgraduate composers. And what was interesting about this project, this brief, was that it was to sort of collaborate with a visual artist as part of the project. So there was a string of composers involved in the project, and then there was also one visual artist. And it was kind of a sort of meant to be a showcase on shape and color through these two disciplines kind of coming together, and how the different composers involved kind of reacted to that brief, and how would visualization and music come together in this kind of live format. Maria and Simon will know what I'm on about because they were also part of that project. And they had very, very different, very contrasting, very interesting responses to the brief as well. So I'll just sort of talk a little bit about the piece itself. Basically, what I did with regards to fulfilling the brief was when I talked to Laura, I sort of asked her a little bit about her work as a visual artist. I didn't know too much about visual art at the time. So it was sort of basic questions like, what is it that you do? Like, what does your day-to-day job look like as a visual artist? What do you like doing with that? And her sort of predominant field was graphic design. And she creates kind of messages, usually around social change, with her graphic design. She's called Laura Orton, the visual artist. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to understand this. And I was telling her a bit about the music I write as well. And then I was thinking, how is this going to be collaborative? I'm a composer who has the language for making music, and she is a visual artist who has the language for art. And we don't really possess the language to bridge it. So that was one of the biggest challenges with this project. And it actually turned out to be one of the most interesting things I've contemplated regarding any kind of art or composition that I've made. So the way I was tackling it was that in the workshops with the musicians, I sort of wrote little sort of 20, 30-second improvisatory prompts for the musicians to play. They just kind of look like this, sort of like little bits written on pieces of paper. I'm not sure how clearly you can see, but basically there's like some notes and some writing, and it's basically, there's an idea, you go off and do that for 30 seconds to a minute. So yeah, I just had like quite a few in succession that we were just trial running. And then at some point I said, right, Laura, we're just gonna play these out, and I want you to try and make your score from what you're hearing. She was an amateur musician. She certainly didn't read music, I don't think. So, you know, it was interesting to try and get her to make a score. I wasn't expecting her to make any musical score, of course. I was asking her to make a visual score, a listening score. And that's what she did based off of those prompts. And then for the concert, I wrote a score, a musical score, based off of her listening score. So then there's this kind of 3-part process where my improvisationary music became visual art, and then I made precise music from that. And that was the sort of the chain reaction, as it were. And then live in the concert, the listening score was put up, and it was scrolling as the music was being played live. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the listening score up into the chat here. It should send in just a minute. And then I think Atafe, you're going to help me out with playing the piece. Is that right? Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And I recommend people opening up the listening score when it arrives. It should be just a second. Yeah, sometime now. And following that, as we go through, as the music is being played. I will say that there's a bit in the listening score that is surrounded by a sort of dashed red box. I will say to ignore that. That's the only bit of the listening score that isn't represented in music. That was just done because it was a retake of previous sections. So yeah, when you get to a big red box, but basically you read it as if you would any text from left to right and then down the page. Yeah, I'm not really sure how much more I should say, really. I think we should sort of like just take it from there, and see what people pick up either from the music and in conjunction with the listening score. So yeah, if Atafe tries to set up the sound.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna. Okay, I'm trying to like follow the listening score at the same time, but if I was wrong,
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Thanks for playing that.
Very nice.
I put the musical score in the chat in case anyone wanted to take a look at that post listening score listen. But yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Reuben.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, this is a great time to ask anything.
Yes, I do. If nobody else does. So let me just change back to gallery view so I can see everybody. I actually had two questions, if you'll bear with me. So I kind of wanted to know about the structure of this, because you had your sort of initial ideas, which you kind of had on the pieces of paper, as you mentioned, that went to Laura, who then kind of made an interpretation. So was there a structure basically in terms of structuring the entire piece, was there an order in which you kind of tried out those original ideas thinking that was the structure of the piece you were going to have? Or did you take a series of designs that Laura had done based on them and then kind of arrange them in a way? Or do you not think about that really at all? And if not, then how did you kind of think about how you would approach the structure of a whole piece, since you're fixing it? When you kind of, it's almost taken out of your hands because you're having to react to diagrams instead of being able to control it in the usual ways.
Yeah, that's a good question. And to be honest, the structure was really a bit of a secondary consideration, to be honest with you, because it was all dependent on what order I gave the prompts to the musicians in the workshops, and therefore that is the order that Laura heard in which she used to make her listening score. And then my job in terms of structure was therefore determined because I really read it from top to bottom. I guess I could have in some ways done a different thing, but I felt content with that way of going about it. Obviously there was that sort of red box where it was a repeat of material, and I sort of made the decision to say I'm actually not going to include that in my then second iteration of a musical score, because I don't want material within that box to be presented at that time. I want some of it to come later. But generally, no, it sort of flowed through that linear pattern. I guess the main consideration was during the workshops when I gave the musicians some of the first materials. I definitely just gave them an order in my mind, and then they played them through in that order. But because I think it's quite a abstract piece, the look of the score is certainly surreal looking, and by all intents and purposes, the sound of it is quite surreal. Both of them in some ways represent just objects floating in space or in time. And if they were to be hashed around, would the piece be different? Yes and no, I suppose.
I can get behind that idea. That's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm entirely open to. So that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah. So to me, it wasn't a predominantly a big consideration, but yeah.
Cool. And the other question I had is a bit of a quicker one. So how many of the ideas that you had initially that you tried out in the workshop then kind of stayed basically the same once Laura had done her thing with it? Because I think that a few of them kind of did, because that opening trumpet thing was kind of based on stuff that we'd already workshopped a bit, so I think that more or less stayed. But
yeah,
did you how much changed, how much stayed, kind of? Because obviously it's quite hard to do as a composer when you know what the original material was. That's always going to be in the back of your mind, whereas if you handed it to a different composer, you might have an entirely different take.
You're right. I think it was a kind of game of toing and froing with how much I wanted to give up the original material. But bearing in mind the original material was sort of an improvisation as well. So there was the chance that the actual final, auditory experience that the audience heard wasn't in fact a replication of what the musicians first played in the workshops those many weeks ago. And that was by design, because obviously it had gone through this 3-part process of kind of artistic alteration. But yes, some of it was the same material. And then after I got the listening score, I sort of noticed parts where Laura's interpretation had gone outside of where I anticipated it to go, and that's good. So I had to write more material. But of course, it sort of harkened back to the original ideas, and because the project was about showcasing shape and color, all of my ideas were around that. You know, the shape in terms of the actual shapes and what shapes were being created by the musical lines, and looking into what is a line. Is it straight? Is it detached? Is it smooth? Does it go up and down? Does it steer away? Is it just a blob? And also color. You know, how do we give color to one note? What does color in one note mean? Versus what does an artist's interpretation of color mean? So these things had to kind of be a bit of a tennis match between two artists who worked in different fields. And yeah, that's what was made of it.
Cool. Thanks.
That was really fascinating. Thanks.
Dan has his hand up.
And yeah, any other cues?
Yeah, I was interested in the process of taking her score, how you got that to music. Was that kind of an intuitive process, or did you sort of formalize? Like this squiggle means this color means this.
Yeah.
How much of that was sort of?
Well, it's sort of open to interpretation, that. But when I was given the listening score from Laura, she did say, you know, green means trumpet, yellow means violin, blue means alto sax. So I stuck to that. I didn't want to kind of mess up with that formula. And then sort of the thicker the line, what I interpreted that to mean was the louder the volume, and the thinner the line, the quieter.
Sure.
But other than that, there wasn't too much pre-composed or determined instructions for what I was meant to go off. And some sections took a long time to write over into music, and then some of the sections took minutes. So it really did change as I was writing it based off of this visual artwork. Some of it I could just look at and think I know immediately what that's going to be, but then some of it didn't actually. Some of it didn't get finalized until the day of the concert. So yeah, it was all a bit of a journey, but I recommend if no one's produced music by going off of another artistic source, I recommend doing that. Yeah.
Did you think about the pacing of how long each? Was that something that you purposely sort of stretched and?
Yes and no, because again, in the live performance, that obscured from the visual a little bit, because the musicians were going off of a written score, and the written score had pauses that were kind of written into the the visual art, but kind of not at the same time. So yeah, I think when it came to like silences, that was maybe the biggest the biggest subject to change matter, but most of it was calculated roughly.
Yeah, so it's another parameter almost. How much you stick to it.
Everything was a parameter. It
Yeah.
really got me thinking about how flexible I can be with all of the parameters. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. I really enjoyed that. Sorry if I didn't scroll really well with the listening score.
It's all right. Thank you.
We need to just be careful about the time and start the
We
next
should
one.
just actually let me just check if I have any questions. So Yeah, actually, I'm just interested to know what you believe the listening score adds to the music and vice versa. So like how watching the graphic score influences your experience of the music, and this like vice versa. Just, you know what I mean?
That's possibly the biggest question to come from this, and I don't really have an answer, because it was an experiment to see how I could engage with a visual artist and produce one result. Now, yes, that result is a product of a multi-step process in which both of us were involved, in different extents. But I was very conscious that when it came to the musical material, I was in control of that. And then when it came to the visual material, Laura was in control of that, because I didn't want either of our disciplines to step over one another. I wanted them to all kind of pass over and hand over to one another, because at the end of the day, she's the visual artist. Her strength lies in that, and I didn't want to determine how she was going to make her art. It was just based off of music in the air to her. How does looking at the graphic score change the audience's perception? In a lot of different ways. Hearing music while there's a visualization going on is really interesting to me. I guess, what am I trying to say? Like, it's a different way of taking it in. If a person is not musical, but they're seeing it at the same time as hearing it, that's something there. That's two types of information at once. Whereas if you're musically literate and you're reading the score along with the music, that's just maybe the same information in two different ways. Don't really have a concrete answer.
It struck me that it was like it really took you into another world, and it kind of felt like you were being welcomed into the world of someone who sees music in a visual way, and that's quite different from my own perspective, because I've always heard music like just as music and not really necessarily as anything that you can visualize. So it was just really fascinating to sort of feel like you kind of got this alternative perspective. It's really lovely. So it's a really amazing, interesting piece. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we should probably move on because of time. So our next composer is Ryan Woods. Would you like to introduce yourself and something about your work, please?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Ryan. I am I guess I'm an electroacoustic composer. So I work with found sound and field recordings a lot. I've just finished my master's as of Thursday, handed in the last bit of coursework. So that's where I'm at the moment. And yeah, I do a lot of stuff to do with soundscapes and soundscape composition, which is a very different world to some of the stuff that's on here. And I've got a piece called Mythical Time, the one I'm going to play. And again, it was from a master's brief that I had, and it was to explore time and space, which is about as broad as it gets. And I decided to explore. So in terms of time, it explores mythical time, which is this concept of time that's outside of. We have a very modern concept of time that is abstract, linear, and like carved out into hours and seconds. And mythical time is kind of, the way I understood it at least, was time before we had, you know, church bells which chimed each hour, and our working days depended on whether it was long summer days or short winter days, and so it's got elements of getting away from this abstract time, but also getting away from linear time and into cyclical time, which is to do with sort of not just beginning, middle, and end, but birth and death and rebirth, and so that ties into all sorts of elements of life. So I took that as inspiration for some of the sounds I used, and also that's what music's so good at doing, is taking us out of abstract time. So that was kind of the inspiration for time. And then in terms of space, I'd been listening to a lot of John T. Harrison, who's quite a big electroacoustic composer from Birmingham, and he had just come out with some really interesting work that I kind of saw him as composing with place. So he'd build up these really believable sonic images, which enabled this thing called, there's actually an academic who coined this phrase, I can't remember the name of, but it's called imaginal listening. So there's this clear sort of visual image within your mind's eye as you're listening, and it'll vary depending on who the listener is. But so that my idea was to play around with that, and what we call source bonded sound. So if you hear the sound of a bird chirping, it's quite easy to picture a bird and say, okay, well, I know what that is, and as opposed to more sort of music concrete and lots of acousmatic music, which just explores the intrinsic qualities of sound. So that's kind of where I've come at this from. Yeah, and I guess I should just play it. And I think I can share my sound. And I'll turn myself off and play it for you.
Good stuff.
Yeah, some really good shit. Really
The
good
kind of
shit.
thing that happens when you're just a bit too tired and you're delirious, and then everything is like super interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
We're on a roll with the weird dream consciousness theme.
Yeah.
There's some good stuff.
What did we decide? Like, you have
What
like
about
real time, but also brain time, which is sort of malleable depending on the state of mind you're in, whether you're sleeping or whether you're like focused on something, or whether you're bored and looking for something to do. So like unoccupied, but not intentionally unoccupied. Sort of like unintentionally unoccupied. Then it sort of changes your perception of real time, even though real time is constant.
10 minutes for a bunch of people could feel like it lasted different amounts of time.
Yeah.
Surely that means something. And then we were like, how will we describe it to like an alien race that didn't have the concept of time? We wouldn't be able to understand anything. It got really confusing.
Yeah, it did.
We melted a little bit. We were like, well, I don't know.
Would you fall asleep straight after that conversation?
Yeah, it was too much. That was such a, that actually happened.
Yeah.
We just frazzled ourselves. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really lovely. Does anyone have any questions? Ah, Simon, do you want to?
No, I'm just clapping.
Oh.
I haven't thought of any good questions
It's
yet.
very confusing.
I'm sure, give me some time. I'm sure I'll think of something.
It just is very confusing with the hand. It just looks like the same symbol. Does anyone else have any questions? I actually do have some questions if nobody has any. I was just wondering, what kind of experience did you intend the listener, and to what extent did this take the concept of visualization into account? So like I can see that you were talking about like how you kind of have like sounds which like kind of trigger sort of visual images, like because you recognize what they are and stuff. So I was just wondering whether there was some kind of structure to the sounds that you chose and how you kind of how you conceive the piece out of those.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a massive intention behind sort of like deciding what I wanted the listener to imagine. I was more concerned when I chose the sounds about sort of this idea of mythical time, and so I was recording sounds of seed pods and things. So like I was thinking, I know, birth, and there's the sound of an mbira in there, which is traditionally used in ceremonies to sort of contact ancestors in Shona tradition in Zimbabwe, and yeah, things to do with that sort of thing. And then I just happened to have this amazing recording of two people talking about time. And yeah, I don't know, it was also that was kind of my, and then I don't know, just coming back around to the same sounds. I usually do that in my pieces, come full circle with back to the beginning again. But bits of the heartbeat and like breath and human cycles as well in there. So that was kind of how I chose my sounds. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I really enjoyed that. I could feel myself in that area exactly. I was just wondering, in electroacoustic like composition, do you have the like this process of writing the sketch like Ruben or other instrumental composers? You usually have some sketch to find the sounds, to write the notes. I was just wondering, is the same in electroacoustic composition, or you have another way to find how you want to make the piece?
Yeah, it varies. I mean, my more recent work has just been, I do a lot of field recording in my spare time, and so a lot of I mean, if I have a brief, then I sort of think about what's relevant. But so a lot of it involves trawling through recordings that I already have and finding relevant stuff, and then making a library of sounds, and then from there maybe developing some sort of visual sketch of how I might like the sort of crescendos and sort of the peaks and the troughs to go, so to speak. Yeah, and so I'll usually have some sort of weird graphic score to help me visualize where I'm going, and but that'll change throughout. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, and a lot of for electroacoustic stuff, I think a lot of it is you're working because you get a very immediate response back in terms of sound. It's all real time. You're hearing it and then you edit it a little bit, then you hear it again, you edit. So it's quite an immediate sort of like, yeah, an immediate feeling of, oh yeah, I don't like that, I'm going to change it, or yeah,
okay.
as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any more questions? Are we ready to move on?
I was just going to ask, I thought that idea of immediacy is really interesting. Do you think that affects how you write in terms of, compared to writing instrumental music? You have that ability to sort of hear things and really fine tune things that I suppose you don't with instrumental music. Do you think that affects your process at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think people have written about it and everything. Yeah, and you come away with a pre-recorded finished product. You don't have to have performers perform it in terms of fixed media, at least, like this piece. So yeah, you can fine tune it to milliseconds and say, actually, I want it just a tiny bit shorter, that gap or whatever. So you have a lot more like forensic control over the forensic detail of the piece. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Ryan. That was really, really interesting. I think, are we ready to move on? I think so, yeah. So the last composer we're going to feature is Maria Palapanadu, and she's going to talk about her piece Amazed. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your piece? Thank you so much.
So, hi everyone, I'm Maria. I am a third year PhD student at the University of Manchester, and my research is about working with 3D shapes, basically, like turning shapes and 3D structures and make them into a traditional notated score. So then it can be performed. And for most of my pieces, I have worked with 3 axes. So like you take the x-axis, H, Y, and Z, and you place plane surfaces on that, and then with creatively, and then you turn them into music. So with this piece, I decided to do something way different, and I want to go completely away from all this predetermined and pre-made structure somehow. And I made what is called actually a graphic animated score or a graphic animated piece, and it's a video, and the whole thing looks like a maze room, which actually has only one route, so the players never actually face a dead end. And it's mostly based on improvisation, so I give a little bit of instructions of which pitch material I want the players to play, or what to do in specific rooms. So it consists of rooms, and then I made a video. So I just navigated myself inside this maze, and I made this video so the players can play from that. So it's actually fixed. It's considered to be a fixed score. And yeah, I think I should just show you instead of just talking about it, because it's really hard to describe what exactly this thing is. And I want to say two more things. The first one is about the title. The title is actually, I call it Amaze because it's easy to say so, but the correct title is Alpha Maze. It's from the Greek letter alpha, which actually means absence. So it's like non-mazed, basically. That's how we could describe it. And when I made that piece, I made the video, I had a structure somehow. I didn't know who was going to play it. Like I had no idea about the sounds, or like I knew a little bit about the sounds. And I spoke with the Avazad duo that day, I remember, and we said, let's try it. And the moment we had the one go, I knew that this is what I want to do. Like I want this piece to be played by a santur and the flute. And this is for many reasons. The first one is like the girls are amazing players, honestly. And they improvise a lot anyway, like they're amazing in improvisation. And also the santur has a plain surface. So it's really, really easy to show a player how to draw shapes on that. And there's something else. I asked the girls whether it would be possible for them to include specific modes from their cultural heritage. And this is something that we spoke with earlier, and she told me this is like the term we use. So the piece has two black corridors, and the first time the santur improvises and the flute just follows, and the second time the flute improvises like totally freely and the santur follows. Now the thing is, the piece is quite long. It's 15 minutes long, and I don't know whether I can play the whole thing. I don't know if we have the time, and it exists in YouTube. Like if you just type Avazad, I think it's one of the videos. We perform it in Cosmo like 2 years ago, I think, 1 year ago. I can't remember. I can just share the screen now. I don't know, like, should we play the whole thing? Should just play the first 5 minutes, 5 minutes from the middle, and then like 1, 2 minutes from the end? I don't know.
We should play the whole thing. I think we have time.
Okay.
Just to end in half an hour, so it's more than.
Okay, good. I have a little bit of being unstable in the internet lately, so whatever happens, I would say that if one of you can just open the YouTube video, continue from that thing.
Yeah.
Okay? I hope I'm not going to just fall on something. So I'm just going to share the sound and yeah. So this is it. This is here. Here it is. Sorry, can I say something? Like, what's the problem with the audio? I
I'm
can't
not
hear
having a
you.
problem with the audio personally.
Oh, well, I find that it cuts out a lot.
Yeah, I also find that.
It seems to like filter out like the sounds as well. So like sometimes the flute plays without the santur, and like when
Just advanced audio, like just do it. Sorry about audio settings, and then automatically adjust and just unclick that. Let's see if that's good, better. Okay, sorry about that. Like, let's
No
continue
worries.
where we were. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. It was really
Thank you
Mhm.
for playing it, both of you.
Does anyone have any questions? I have some questions if nobody's.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you imagine particular sounds in connection with the images you created when you devised this piece?
The thing is, when I made this piece, the video, I didn't know the instruments. Like, so the answer is like, no, not really. But what I knew was like, I wanted the sounds to change. Like, I knew that I had already made the rooms to look different to each other. So I knew that I want to have some kind of difference between the rooms, and also like some of the elements to reappear sometime. And also had like a main motive. So I knew that, but I didn't really imagine very specific sounds. Like when I first made it, then when we workshopped it, and then I put more details in that, so it was more specific. But when I first did it, no, not really.
So would you say it was largely based on like relative, like what was relative to what? So like this was like the opposite of that kind of thing, and
the thing with this piece is like it had a lot of technical challenges. So I know that the musical topic, it was like, I knew that I had to think about it at first, but because I had already done this work before in my other pieces, I wanted to just start from the shapes and then go to the music instead of doing the other way around. So yeah, just I started with just experiencing with the shapes and the structure of the bass rather than what music I'm going to have inside there.
Nice. I also have another question.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did you structure the imagery according to some kind of musical narrative you're imagining?
Yeah. Usually my pieces have like a peak. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? My internet is like unstable. They have usually a peak around three-fourths of the duration, like towards the end of the piece, or they have an interlude. So I knew that. Like all those are just the same answer to those questions. Like I made the structure to be the one room to be different from the other, and I knew that by default this is going to lead to different music by keeping some elements the same. So yeah, I knew I couldn't have a lot of control, and because most of my pieces are traditionally notated, so it just I wanted this to be kind of improvised fully. So yeah, again, I didn't imagine much in terms of the sound. I knew I wanted like the first sound to change to a second sound without knowing what the first sound would be, basically.
So if you had a climatic moment in mind, how did you, what did you do to try and control the build up towards that climatic moment using visuals?
Basically, you just put more information in, or you just extract more information. Like I considered the peak to be in the playroom, like the one who had the more of the most shapes, and you actually build around that. Like if you want to have a peak, in my opinion, just before that you have something simpler, like you might use one color, or you just not use a lot of shapes, and then you build it like this. So it was like the visual part, basically.
Yeah, I was just very amazed at like how well that worked. Just like from a performer's point of view, there was a really strong sense of like you were heading somewhere, even though you had no clue where. And even just like playing it for the first time, there was like this mystery about it.
Yeah, that's thank
you're
you.
kind of floating around, like you don't have any legs, and it's just a very surreal experience. And yet, like, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what color's coming up, and you don't know where you end up, but there's like
This is
tension, which is just beautiful. Yeah, sorry.
thank you for this. Actually, this is the first time. Like, I know that this is actually considered to be a fixed piece, as I said. Like, if someone can actually treat this score as it is a traditional notated score, like you can play the video 100 times and you can learn what comes next. And so this is an element you say, which is, we discussed it a lot with my supervisor, and he suggested that I should navigate live the performance and I should just have different routes, which is a huge project, to be honest. Like, it would take me a lot out of my research to do that. And there's plenty of things someone can do, like if they create a maze, they can just work with that. Nina Whiteman have made similar pieces, but not in 3D, actually in 2D. Like she has like a maze pieces, which if someone is interested can have a look. And I couldn't find anything similar to what I wanted to do. But because that's just a small part of my PhD, I wanted to stay there. I didn't have much time to go further into that. And also I consider myself to just stay into traditional notation. I know that, yeah, there's more things than that, but this is what I'm doing. Yeah.
I remember you referred to it as an experiment at some point, and I was just wondering if you were to take what you've sort of gathered from the experiment and you were to develop it further, what would you do exactly?
I did the Vonnegut piece. So this and the Vonnegut piece, the one we did with Ruben and Simon. So if someone was in that concert, I created a sculpture out of 12 meters of tulle fabric. So the main difference is, like in this piece that we just heard, it's fixed. The other piece, it's not a maze, of course, but it's again 3D, which is made live. So that was the next step I took. And then I decided that this is a really nice world, which I don't really know much about, because I'm like a composer who actually creates a score and just give it to the performance. And it's very standard procedure. And maybe in the future I will do more. But it was fun. Those two projects were fun. But then I went back to what I used to do. I just experiment, and I said, okay, that's enough for now. Maybe later I will just do more. Yeah. So yeah, the Vonnegut piece was like way more abstract than this one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember your Vonnegut pieces. Really good. I really liked it. Yeah. Oh,
it
sorry.
was both of them. What did you want to say?
There's a question.
No, it was like very fun to do both projects, actually. Yeah. Ruben says something. It feels like, yeah, it is actually a video game. Like, it's not a video game. I was inspired by a first-person video game environment, and I have to say that one of the most difficult parts of this project was actually to make the video, to navigate yourself inside there, because sometimes the software stacks and you have to start all over, and I couldn't just cut it. I didn't know how to do that, so I had to do it one go. And yeah, but if someone knows more pieces about mazes and stuff, please tell me about them, because I really couldn't find anything out there similar to this one.
There is a piece by that was performed by Trio Artem, I think.
Yeah, it's Nina's pieces, Nina's maze pieces. Yeah, this is the main reference I had, and it might be inspired from this, because I knew about Nina's pieces since the masters, and then just 2 years just passed by, and then I made this piece. So I was surprised I really liked Nina's mazes. They're amazing. Yeah.
Any questions?
Thank you so much, Maria. It was so good, and I'm so enjoyed when I played and now again listen.
Thank you. I know it's a really long piece. Like, yeah, it would be basically better if it was like quite shorter, but I want to do it this way. And thank you so much for playing it.
But I think it was great that you played the whole thing, because I think it did have a very nice structure, and I think like a lot of would have been lost without that, because it really did feel, you know, like you were leaving wherever you started off, and that worked really nicely. Oh my gosh, running out of battery. I'm gonna go and get my cable. If anyone, Atabe, do you have any questions?
No, I'm just want to say the last comments, because we are at 9:30 and that's the last, the end of the session. I was just saying, thank you everybody for coming and sharing your piece and listening to each other, and for making this program happen. We both really appreciate if you have any feedbacks, comments to improve this session. I just wrote our email in the chat box. Please send us, and we would be happy and appreciate if you can also share these events with family, friends. And we are really trying to work on this forum to make more audiences for the composers and everyone actually. And yeah, the next one is the next month. It's 4th April, again this first Sunday. We are looking forward to see all again.
Yeah, and also coming up in connection with the forum, we're also running a series of performance workshops, which feature a range of musicians that specialize in improvisation and performance practices from around the world. So this is to help us as composers get an alternative perspective into the creation of new music, like sort of to give us insight into the more intuitive aspects. So I feel like as a composer, you need a sort of balance between the really structured approach where you kind of have a very like strong controlling grasp over everything that happens, and the more intuitive kind of approach where you sort of just see where it takes you. And so these workshops are held in a closed group, very informal occasion, creating a safe space for musicians to play for one another. If you'd like to join us, search for the Avazad performance workshops on Facebook and request to join the group. Just make a note of who you are and what kind of music you play. It's just because we want to create a sort of safe space for people to perform. So that's the only reason why we have it sort of as a closed group, because we want to make people feel comfortable and not feel like they're being exposed to an audience that doesn't necessarily appreciate what they do. So that's the only reason. But yeah, so it would be great to have lots of people join us for that and share their own musical practices. And yeah, if anyone has any questions about this, feel free to ask or email us as well. And thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the forum. Thank you so much, all the composers shared their work and performers that played in the recordings. So yeah, I've lost where is the Zoom chat thing? Everyone's disappeared. Where are you? Yeah. So have a good evening. See you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.